Hello. Hey now. Carissa Span here, the landlord and tenant coach. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Landlord and Tenant Show. Today we are discussing landlord and tenant matters that are important to so many of you. So today we're discussing tenants who are not paying rent. They want their rent waived during the pandemic. Landlords are still demanding rent. And so the question is, what do we do? How do we handle those type of situations? And so today we are going to have a panel discussion, and I'm interested to hear how people are feeling about this subject matter because whether you're a landlord or a tenant, or you know somebody who is, this subject matter is real and it's important to a lot of people. So I thought it would be fitting to have this conversation today. All right. And so today I have um, someone who I've had the pleasure of meeting, very knowledgeable, very skilled on the subject matter. And I want you to stay tuned. If you hear something today that you believe is helpful, that can help somebody else, please like and share this broadcast because my goal is to make sure that people in the community are getting the information they need because an educated rental community works a whole lot better when we work together. All right. All right. So I have two young ladies today and we're going to have a discussion because it's so important. So please lend them your attention, be nice to them. And again, if you have comments, if you have questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. All right. So I'm going to bring on Alex and I'm going to bring on Sharita. All right. Hello, Sharita.
Hi, how are you?
Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And so, listen, I thought it was important to bring you both on so we can have this discussion on this landlord and tenant discussion that we're seeing because we're still in the middle of the pandemic and tenants are not paying rent. They feel like they shouldn't pay rent while landlords are still demanding that rent be paid. So the question is, should there be a compromise? Like what's going on here? Ladies, have you had the chance to follow the eviction moratorium and all that's going on in the country because of the pandemic? I'm gonna start with you, Alex.
I've been following it. We have to look up our current events for class. So I've been not so close because, but you talk about it in class. So that's basically where I get a lot of the information about specifically Washington, D.C. and the eviction moratorium. And so, and then there's the national news about the pandemic in general.
So, Sharita, I'm going to start with you first because I want your input. Should landlords demand rent in the pandemic?
So I want to thank you for that question, Carissa. I wrote some notes, and for the couple of the talking points I have here, I like to say, so your rent is a contract, and it's a contract between the landlord and the tenant. So to use the word demand, I think lends a certain type of tone to the relationship. I do feel that the lease obligates me as a landlord to do certain things. The lease says, as the landlord, I will provide safe housing, clean housing, fix things on time, pet your dog, I don't know, whatever the lease says. You said that in return for these, what I'm offering you, what I'm providing for you, that you would pay me X amount of dollars by said date. with a security deposit or whatever your language is. Then you said if you didn't pay on time, you would give, 2% or whatever it is in your jurisdiction, right? We did all of this outside of COVID, right? So I do understand COVID has changed things with people's employment, but it did not change the facts. You are entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to the fact. And the fact is, we went into this agreement, this legally binding contract, last year in December when there was no COVID. So I don't know if you get to adjust it just because things have changed. Now, if you can't pay, that's different, and we can talk about that. But I'm not demanding rent. I'm just asking you to hold up your end of the rental agreement that we made, as you're asking me to hold up mine.
That's good. That's a good point. Now, before I respond, Alex, should landlords demand rent during the pandemic?
Well, okay, my perspective on that question is I'm coming from a perspective of, like, number one, acknowledging that rent payments represent like a cost plus a profit for the landlord. The landlord is providing a service, and the incentive is the profit. It's a business relationship. And business relationships inherently involve risk. And in being a business, in gaining a profit, involved in that is risk. And there's all kinds of risk that might prevent the business from realizing their profit, the profit that might be contracted, the profit that might be expected. Right. So I think that from that perspective, and also as we've talked about in class, my perspective that housing itself should be something that's managed where the main goal is that people have a place to live. I don't personally believe that it serves humanity that housing is such an overwhelmingly profit-driven industry. I would like to see a world where people have a place to live based on the fact that humans need to live indoors and have certain things to live. So those are my opinions. So when I hear the question, should landlords demand rent? I think that in posing it as if in this contract, we have been contracted and the rent amount is set at this amount, as if we're carving it in stone, and as if that amount represents a tangible, represents the full scope of the actual need in terms of capital of maintaining this home so that someone can live in it. So now that we're in a pandemic and people are not working, the call to cancel rents came when people lost their income. This is not some campaign point that somebody is running just to see if people will vote for it. People are experiencing a traumatic event and a traumatic loss of their ability to work and their ability to make money. And they're experiencing this, and it is jeopardizing their ability to have a place to live. So if we ask the question as if the amount of money that this person was contracted to pay per month in January when they could go to work should be set in stone and demanded in June, after we're months of people not having any work. Now we're in November and people are still out of work. People can't leave their homes. People have experienced chains of losses in their family, death and loss of the ability to work. What is the demand? The demand for rent from the landlord, and we can talk about the fact that a lot of landlords are private citizens themselves, that experience that this profit represents their own ability to house themselves. So I think we have, if we dig deep into this question, we recognize that the money in question, the what's needed in the situation so that people have places to live, needs to have a collective solution that involves, that doesn't just demand, that doesn't, what's the biblical thing, trying to juice a turnip or something, like trying to squeeze water from sand. You know,
I'm not familiar with that verb. Continue.
It's something like trying to, you know.
I'm not familiar, but please continue.
But that's what I'm saying. You know, so should landlords demand rent? From whom? Out of where? You know what? In fact, they should actually demand that the government that they pay taxes to cares for them in this situation. That's what they should be demanding, right alongside the other citizens who have needs. Because we always forget that when we pay taxes, that's a contract with our government for services, and it's on, you know, the government should be prioritizing the health and safety of the populace. At the beginning of this, New York State injected $1.4 trillion into the stock market so that investors wouldn't experience a loss. We saw that with the subprime mortgage lending crisis. The money went to the bank and people still lost their houses and their life savings. And we can't set that as like, okay, for granted, and then turn around and say, well, you know, how should we extract the money from the people who don't have anything to their name in the first place?
Let me jump in there, because you threw in some really good nuggets. But Perlene said trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip. I think that's what you were looking for.
Something like that. Yeah.
So I just want to say,
Miss Perlene. Thank you, Miss Perlene. Okay, because I didn't know what you were talking about.
So you did have some really great points in there, Alex. So I guess my question is, because many of you know that I live by the philosophy, and I share this philosophy, that if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. And if you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. So here's the truth of the matter. All landlords cannot afford for tenants to live in the property and not pay rent. Because for many landlords, some of them, as you've indicated, they're essentially living paycheck to paycheck. So they're depending on tenants to pay the rent. And I get it. We're in the pandemic, and some people just don't have the finances. They don't have the ability to pay. I think Perlene stated, and she's tuning in from ATL. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hello, Dr. Michael Green and Paul, Lynette. Thank you all for tuning in. Perlene Seal, she indicated that in Atlanta, Georgia, they're putting people out. Landlords are starting to put people out. Now, is it legal? I can't speak to, because of the national pandemic. I don't know if there's an eviction moratorium in place in that jurisdiction that trumps the CDC guidelines. But all I do know is this: it is a business, and some people just can't afford for people to stay in the rental property and not pay. So that's why it's necessary to have this conversation. I see Dr. Dr. Green. Thank you for your comment, Dr. Green. So there's a comment about Prince George's County. Prince George's County has grants for landlords. There are jurisdictions that has decided to step up to help landlords as well as tenants. And so it is definitely in the best interest of landlords to look for resources that are available for tenants. Because ultimately, Landlords should help tenants to help themselves. Now, is it a requirement? No. Does everybody do they even have the capacity to do it? That we don't know. So we can't speak to that. All right. So let me go on to my second question, which is why should tenants be required to pay? And I want Sharita to touch on this. Why should tenants be required to pay? Then I'm going to let you come back and address that, Alex.
So one thing I do want to call to everyone's attention, I find it odd that the people that are in the streets protesting, I think that there is just a different, I don't know if the word is mentality, but it's cancel rent. I ain't seen nobody out there talking about cancel mortgages. So I think that first of all, we're not even on the same planet when we're thinking about responsibility, your social responsibility, your financial responsibility, because I think there's a certain sense of entitlement that we see out there. And that's just, and I'm gonna try to keep my comments to a minute. I know my friend here, Alex, can be a little bit more loquacious. I'll try to keep my
I'll limit myself. You should give me
just so we're not here all night. I can't sleep with y'all now. But so I do think there's something that now some mortgage companies are offering relief, and I do believe that if your mortgage company is offering relief as a landlord, you should seek it. I don't think that you're obligated to pass it on to the tenant, but if the tenant doesn't pay you, then pay it forward. And that's how I feel like everyone should do it. You don't have to say, I would never come out my mouth and say to my tenant, you don't have to pay me rent. However, if they say they're in a bind and then I know I'm getting something on the back end from the bank, I will pay it for it because in my moral compass tells me that's the right thing to do. And I agree with Alex. There's an inherent bit of risk in all of this. So 3 months, I can take care of your adult self and your adult kids because you can't do it. But I can't do that for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I'm a single woman. I'm a small business. And there are grown people, grown, able-bodied men. You can. There are jobs. Starbucks is hiring. The Giant in Brentwood, I go there all the time by the big sign, we're hiring. So what I'm going to need you to do is get one of these other jobs that may not be the job you're used to, but there are jobs out there and people are hiring. In a sense of entitlement, it just needs to stop. Matter of fact, I just read a book here recently. It was talking about the welfare queen, Linda Taylor. It wasn't really about that, but it was just talking about how sometimes the socialized programs we have connected actually handicaps whole generations of people. And I'm Black, and I'm saying this, and I'm from Detroit, and I'm from a single mom household, and I made it out. So the mentality, the dependent mentality, the please give me something for nothing, I'm entitled to this, it's created a generation of people who who have no concept of standing up and saying, I'm gonna make a way for myself, pandemic or not. And I think we're seeing the symptoms of that when you see decrease the rent, because nobody's saying stop the mortgage.
I can definitely appreciate that. Alex, do you have a response to that?
Well, my question is, first of all, why isn't anyone saying stop the mortgage? Landlords can be just as political as tenants. They have more money, more power. They might have a connection. And if they invested themselves in programs, assistance programs for themselves, they might see more assistance programs. The fact that tenants, because they're in danger of homelessness, are out in the streets, are lobbying their governments, are calling their governments and voting for, things that will help them, that should be something that landlords are doing. And big businesses get mortgages canceled all the time. They get bailouts all the time. The fact that small businesses are neglected by the government is a political issue. And as a small business, landlords will benefit from political action in that respect. So there's that. The other thing is, I think that we have the perception that people who find themselves using government programs, like what we call entitlements, what's skewed about that is that the real welfare queens are the corporations that have low paying jobs where people can work full time and still be eligible for food stamps. wages are stagnant. The minimum wage is still $7.25 when the top 1% has doubled the amount of wealth they have. The money is being siphoned to the top, and jobs aren't paying the amount of money it takes to live and pay rent. And so if 1 month slips by, you could be in complete financial ruin, even someone who is working 40 hours a week, full time or more. So I just think that this issue, I think that COVID really kind of like laid bare something that has been a problem, an increasing problem. Just wages are stagnant, pay is low, jobs are actually, unemployment is actually high, industries are automating, people will find themselves even more out of work and unable to do the jobs that they need to survive. I mean, DC rent is insane. You can't live anywhere in the city. And so, yeah. So my again, should tenants be required to pay? I think there are solutions. I think that we can ask more questions than that. That's what I'm saying. That's my perspective on that. And the tenant and the landlord have an actually co-mutual relationship. It is not simply a benevolent provision of housing that reaches down and pulls people up and gives them something. Like, this person is a profit generator. So there's a mutual interest in everyone actually not being neglected.
Okay, those are great points. I want to look at some of the comments that have come in before we go to our third question. I see that Aaliyah, she made a comment that some people are not hiring, not during the pandemic and probably not even after the pandemic. So where does that put tenants and renters who are out of work? They can't get a job. They're applying for jobs. Where do they go? Where do they get this money from? And so Sharita, she touched on some things that people are hiring, but what about the people who won't hire some of these residents because maybe they lack the skills or what have you to get a job? There are a lot of variables that we can throw in, but what happens when they can't get a job and they still have to pay the rent? So I do like that comment. I'm going to go to Valerie's comment that says, I agree, one's first priority should be to pay your rent first and foremost. I definitely agree. I remember growing up, I have an old school father. My parents, very old school. My dad, many of you know who, if you've been following me, my father's like 93. Old school guy. He said, you always make sure you have a roof over your head. If your utilities are off, if you have no food in your house, nobody will know. But if you don't pay your rent, you're going to be put out. Everybody will know it. All right. So that is, that's so true. I definitely like that comment. I'm going to go to the next comment by Dr. Michael Green. He says, stop the rent should be on the docket as well. I definitely agree that more conversation must happen, that there should be more initiatives, because it's not just don't pay rent or stop paying rent, but what do we do as a government, right? What do we do? How are we really helping the people? So I definitely agree with you on that. Dr. Michael Green, he added another comment. He said, let us hold our elected leaders accountable. The pandemic has been a travesty. I definitely agree. All right. Misty says, well said. Perline's comment says, some are spending the money the government is giving them. They're buying name brand things instead of compromising to pay their rent. That's the unfortunate part about it, because people who are not financially stable and they don't have an understanding of budgeting and what that means, they're getting the money. So it's not that they don't have the money. Some people are actually getting the money, have gotten thousands of dollars, and still have not paid their landlords. I definitely appreciate
I don't think that represents the majority of people, especially the people asking for help, especially the people, you know, who don't want to be homeless. I have to push back on that comment.
So her comment does say some. That is the reality, though.
Yes, that's my reality. That show at least one person who that's happening to.
I definitely agree.
So I'll just be just one person in the world. It's just me.
All right, so let me go to Lauren.
Carissa, can I say, when I said the term welfare queens, I know that came from Ronald Reagan, Reaganomics. I mean, I wasn't born in 1982, so this all was happening when I was still, in my mom's thoughts or whatever. But just from what I understand from Reaganomics and pushing the welfare queen, that's just code language for poor Black single mother. And that's not what I was trying to say. I was more so trying to say that people that use the system and abuse the system, like they're getting the money from the government. They're getting TANF, they're not paying their rent. They're getting food stamps, but they're selling 50% of them, taking the cash and going to get, I don't know, their eyelashes done or hair extensions. So I'm not using code language for poor Black women. I'm using real language for people that abuse the system.
And that's true. And that's a great point. Alex, would you agree that some people are actually abusing the system?
I think that corporate welfare represents like way more money that could be like Amazon. Jeff Bezos is a multi-trillionaire. He hasn't been taxed. Like none of that money that he's paid. So everyone's locked inside and still needs groceries. So they're using his service. He's making $1 trillion profit. And we're not seeing any investment into infrastructure, people, recovery by taxing his profits. Amazon doesn't pay taxes. Bank of America doesn't pay taxes. Walmart doesn't pay taxes. Walmart pays people so low that their full-time employees need food stamps. So all of the food stamps that taxpayers pay for is actually being given to Walmart so the people can live and come and work for Walmart. And that represents way more money. This is the thing. Like when you pursue the off chance that someone, buys the wrong thing at the grocery store, you're not actually representing any gains. If we have to, it is imperative that we all orient ourselves toward the real actual problem. And it's not the 3 people that buy hair extensions instead of bread. It's the corporations that make trillions of dollars and don't pay taxes.
Okay, so let me ask you a question because go ahead, Sharita.
I'd like to invite Alex to move to Pyongyang in North Korea because I believe they have a system similar to the one you'd like to see here in the United States, but this is capitalism.
The system where corporations pay taxes in the 1960s, the top marginal tax rate was 90%, and that's how they sent people to the moon.
A system where the government takes care of the people. That's called socialism or communism. And what you want is the government to subsidize housing for poor people or whoever or everybody, however it goes. You want people that worked hard. Jeff Bezos worked hard. It's not like he's sitting up there every day drinking his latte. He worked hard.
But he's not paying taxes. You pay You pay more taxes. You pay more of a percentage of your income in taxes than he does. Is that fair?
I think you shouldn't speak about my taxes of which you don't know about. So let's all just talk
about.
You
pay more than zero. So, you've said it yourself that you pay taxes. So you pay more than zero. Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes.
Okay, so here's the thing.
We don't know his tax bracket. His business may not pay taxes, and that's business. My business doesn't either. I'm always operating in a loss. That's why I have a small business.
Now I can definitely appreciate. I appreciate the comments that are coming in. All right. So we're not blaming Jeff Bezos. Okay. All right. We're not doing that. I'll put Dr. Michael Green comment back up. He says, not at all. We do need to understand how money works in America. I definitely agree.
Exactly.
Because the lack of knowledge is the downfall for so many people. yes, we could definitely, we could blame a lot of people. We could blame people for their success and how they run their business, but it's the lack of financial independence, job security, education. All of those things are important. So if people are not putting themselves in the position to learn more, because knowledge is education most of the time is free. Just reaching out, getting the information, getting the knowledge, getting connected with people to learn about areas that people are lacking in. It's available. So let me just state that. I'm not big on ignorance. All right. But I do believe that this conversation is needed and it is healthy because there is so much going on. And we can see whether it's in our community, in our family, people that are close to us, that people are impacted everywhere, not just landlords, not just tenants, but people are impacted everywhere. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. So I do want to go on to our third question because, and I think that we've touched on this a little bit about, do you believe that more financial assistance should be made available? And if so, to who? Should more financial assistance be made available to landlords? Or should more financial assistance be made available to tenants, and why?
So this is what I like. I'm gonna be brief. At least I try to be. This is what I think. I definitely think for the comment box, we need to understand more about money. So when Alex is saying Jeff Bezos and Amazon's are different. Sharita and Pink Properties are different. Sharita gets taxed on my income as a single woman, as a registered nurse with no kids and blah, blah, blah. Pink Properties is different. It is my business. It's the business arm, and that is not the same. So I educated myself about the business tax laws and worked with a tax accounting professional. And when I realized how it worked and how everybody was winning and how I was losing, I refused to lose anymore. So I agree with Carissa. There needs to be more education because this is capitalism. So all the people, education's free in this country. You don't want to take advantage of it. You don't want to go to college on a Pell Grant, get a workable skill like registered nursing or go be a teacher and you do whatever your life takes you, and you don't come out with a marketable skill to use your brain or your hands, then that is a risk that you are taking. And I don't know what to tell you because I see the kids all the time. You're 15, 16. Why are you in school? It's school time. Why are you not in school getting your education? You come out at 18, you're not employable. It's a high mass incarceration, so that happens. We're already battling just being Black. Why not? So I think that, Alex, a lot of the reason people can't work or aren't working is because we weren't prepared to weather the storm, right? Like we just weren't. And I don't know how to. I mean, I did. I'm from a single mom in Detroit. I can't say that enough. So a lot of it's about choices. So when you're 16 and you have a baby, okay, then what you are saying is what is happening is that you already Black. You already starting behind the lines. Now to come out and talk about cancel rent, you got 3 kids to feed. Those are decisions that you made. So part of it's education, getting a marketable skill. Part of it's just bad decision making. So no, I won't be punished because I made better decisions in my life. I won't. I reject that.
I can appreciate that. Thank you so much, Sharita. Alex, what is your response to that, please?
Well, I think you brought up a really good point, which is like, okay, for Black folks,
what?
You said you're already Black. You said, you're experiencing these things on top of us being Black. And I think that speaks to the fact that we really have to start seeing all of these issues as the manifestation of systems. Like I'm talking about the friction that we're talking about between landlords exists because of the economic system we're in. And the fact that Black folks in the US find themselves at the bottom is because, first of all, one of the comments was, what about reparations? That should be top of the list because reparations as an economic initiative to to restructure the capital and give it to the people to which it is owed, number one. So poor people, we're talking about poor people. We're talking about how the question is, should we help poor people? Do you know what I'm saying? And I think we have to acknowledge that systems as they exist now are changeable. If we believe that, we have to ask ourselves what kind of changes. So when you say, don't blame Jeff Bezos for taking advantage of the system, I say, I agree. I don't blame him. So let's talk about changing that system. Let's talk about why that system doesn't work. Let's talk about what we can do to get that system changed, instead of saying, well, that's how it is, so I'm gonna play it this way. But I have to push back and say that people who are unemployed, who are poor, who are homeless, who've been evicted, these are not the product of pure choice. We don't choose where the skin we're in. We don't choose the history of the country we were born in. And as far as choices can be made, we have to understand that we live in a reality that is steered by systems. You can't simply, if you, because of the education you received, have what is considered a low-skilled job, but it's considered a low-skilled job as an economic decision. If you've lost your employment, it is a function of the system you came up with that you're not a lawyer, that you can't just, get another job, that you're in an industry that has completely collapsed, that you are in an area that has completely collapsed. And when we talk about, we can't just take things that cause like morbid outcomes for people as the way it is, because when you're evicting people for non-payment of rent, for example, you're not getting the money back. So this is almost, it feels to me like a revenge kind of thing. You're kicking this person out for the 4 months they couldn't pay. You're not getting the money back anyway. If you had spent that 4 months gathering together all the landlords, maybe the local government could have gotten a grant program up. I'm asking people to really question what's going on, and things can change. Like, it's not, this is how it is, and some people make good decisions and some people make bad decisions. That's not actually the truth.
All right, let me get to some of the, I do want to address some of the comments that have come in. All right, so the technician says, even if Black folk get reparations, it won't do anything if the mindset isn't changed. And I think that we all can agree on that.
Yeah,
well, we know by researching the numbers that's actually incorrect. That's a stereotype that Black folks spend their money on food and living. Rent is one of the largest line items of any budget. Like, we know that. Like, have more confidence in us as a people. We have proven to be exceptional over the course of history. Yes, we have actually. When we were let out of slavery during Reconstruction, do you understand that during Reconstruction, we were a people that had spent more than 200 years enslaved and immediately started to outperform the whites, so much so that it was a problem that they had to enact a political system, Jim Crow, to dismantle all gains for the future on. Do you understand that after slavery, we got to work as we had been doing and started off, and they systemically dismantled our gains? Please read a book about Reconstruction.
All right.
Please read about Reconstruction.
All right.
She's off the rails. So I'm going to tell you.
All right.
I can't.
So, Sharita.
I just want to say a quick thing. So my understanding about the median income, and I'm happy to be corrected, is PG County is like $100,000, right? I like to see somebody pull the numbers of how many BMWs and Mercedes and Audis and stuff out there in PG County. I'm just telling you what I see with my eyes. I lived in PG County for 10 years. You make $50,000 a year. You driving a car that costs $50,000. I'm just talking. That's not everybody, but I'm saying it's enough people to when you pulling up to in your BMW to an apartment. You're not even trying. And I'm not saying it's everybody. I'm not saying it's everybody. I'm just saying that from my experience, from what I've seen. Now, me, I work full time. Y'all know I'm trying to do my little property management, and I don't even have a car because that doesn't help move me forward. Into a car is your biggest. It's the biggest worst thing you can do if you're trying to make money. Period. If you have any other way to get around, you shouldn't get a car. The first thing we do is go get us a luxury car we can't afford. That's from what I've seen, what I grew up seeing, and what I saw. I'm not saying that.
My thing about that is, if that's true,
don't let her go off the rails. Don't let her go off the rails.
No, if that's true, if that is actually true, and people are suffering from financial illiteracy, we have to understand that the fact that they don't teach you about money when they have you as a captive audience in school for 12 years is a manifestation of the system. The system chooses not to have money education in schools. If you go to public school, you learn what you're taught.
So let me interject on that, because I have, as a single mom, I took pride in making sure that my children were educated. And as a single mom, I didn't have the money to put my children in private school, but what I did have was the knowledge to say, you know what, I do not want my children to attend the public school system because it was a failed system. So as a single mother, with the wisdom, the knowledge, and within my ability, I placed my children in charter schools that catered to a different level of learning in different communities that, had they gone to the public schools in the community that I lived in during those times, they would not have advanced the way that they did. So I do believe and agree that education and knowledge is powerful, but we don't have to accept ignorance. We don't have to accept broken systems. But when we have those systems, what are we doing as a people? I'm not talking about skin color, whether you're white, whether you're black, you're brown, you're Asian. When there's a broken system, do we care enough to take action, or do we complain about it? And so that's really what it boils down to for me. So when there's a broken system and people are saying, oh, well, I shouldn't pay rent because, or no, the landlord is wrong. Okay, if there's a broken system, how do we resolve it? How do we fix it? I mean, because we can bash all day. We can talk about what's not right. We could talk about ignorance. We can talk about the lack of knowledge and the lack of education. We know that many of those things, if not all, are true. But here's the thing. It's not applicable for everybody, because Sharita has experienced a level of living that Alex may not have experienced. And so Alex's perspective is different because they're looking at it from two different angles. Doesn't mean that either of you are definitely right or definitely wrong. It's just perspective and your view, what you've experienced. So I think that we have to educate ourselves. Number one, we can't educate others if we're not knowledgeable. All right. And so that's really why I wanted to have this conversation today. Sharita and Alex, you're both knowledgeable. You're both smart and brilliant people, right? But there are so many people who have not experienced life on your level, and maybe vice versa. So before we wrap up, I just want to acknowledge some people who are watching today. Again, I want to say thank you so much for you both being here. Thank you, Perlene, for tuning in from ATL. Lynette, she's an author. She's down in North Carolina. This is what we do each and every week. And if you found this to be helpful, please make sure that you are tuned in each and every Monday, because my goal is to bring information that is beneficial for the community, as landlords as well as for tenants. Because again, an educated rental community, we work better when we work together. All right. Hey, Travis, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're tuned in on Facebook, please make sure that you're liking and sharing this broadcast. If you're watching by way of YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't found me on YouTube, please definitely do that. I just want to say thank you again. Do you have any closing remarks or comments, Sharita and Alex?
I don't want to get out riled up.
Well, I'll go first, so I won't get riled.
Too much. She's off the rail. No,
I'll go first. I just want to say thank you, Sharita. Thank you,
back to Jim Crow.
It goes back. It's all connected.
We talking about cancel the rent, and she done took us back to Jim Crow. That's why
it's all connected. I had a history teacher who used to say the past is prologue. It's all connected.
And you're right. No, you're right.
It's all connected. And I really appreciate the debate that we had. You know, like I agree that it's all about knowledge and questioning the system and going deeper and never stop questioning, you know, never accept how it is as how it's going to be if it's not working. You know, those are my comments.
Absolutely. I see a comment that Pearline, she says, part 2 is about accountability. And I think that's another important conversation that we should and we must have about accountability. Who's going to be accountable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? So again, I just want to say,
I think Alex and I can agree on this, and I know we can. In the 3rd grade, the teacher, the arithmetic teacher, instead of teaching you 3 plus 3, she need to say, "This is your paycheck. It's $2,000. This is your rent. This is your car." No, that's what needs to happen in 3rd grade, because that's when you start learning. That's when you go from adding to subtracting to multiplying to division. When I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read 78 books this year. Okay, so it is about putting the words in your brain. And I read a lot about money and a lot about poverty. I also read $2 How to Survive on $2 a Day. Right, so that's where a lot of this comes from. 3rd grade. This is what you need to, and we need to teach it to all kids, but we especially need to teach it to our kids.
I agree with that.
Because they're not getting it at home.
I completely agree.
Absolutely.
All I can say, you need to understand. I didn't even the reason I got rid of my car was because Robert Kawasaki told me to, right? I had a BMW. And this man, to help why it doesn't work. Why driving a luxury car on my salary? I'm a full-time registered nurse, okay? I'm not poor, I'm not none of that. On my salary did not make any sense. But investing in my property, taking that money and buying me another property, how it did make sense. So that's
well, I look forward to your book.
You'll write the forward, of course.
I will. Hey, look at this.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
I love it.
Yes.
Now, as I bring this to a close, let me just add that Sharita and Alex are they're both students. Many of you know that I am an educator. I'm a housing educator. So this is what I teach. And this is the conversation. These are the discussions that we actually have in class. And so I want people to be knowledgeable. All right. If you have questions, you can catch me online. You can inbox me. My email address is carissaspan@gmail.com. If you felt that this was helpful for you, like I said, please share this information, because sharing is caring. Sharita and Alex, I appreciate you both. And thank you so much for watching. Okay, go ahead.
Don't kick me off. I have one more thing. It's in the chat. Whoever keeps typing, all BMWs are not created equal. I think the point you missed the point. You're tone deaf on that point. It's not about the BMW or the Mercedes. What I'm saying is that putting your money in things that don't make you money. So it could be a Huffy bike. That's like all I'm trying to say.
Food and
if you spend money on a Huffy bike, that's all I'm trying to say. So whoever said that, girl, ain't nobody coming for your BMW. You good? We see you. You ride out.
All right. Well, this was fun.
Okay.
All right. So guys, That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much. My time is up and I thank you for yours. Hope that you'll tune in next week, same time, 7:30 right here on social media. Good night, everybody.
Good night.